Rex. This is a genetic aberration designed to be an invincible predatory dinosaur. A life form that evolves and adapts to destroy everything in his path. Okay, I'm done reading from the wiki. Today, we are reacting to Goji Center's Jurassic Park's Doomsday Rex Explained. Big shout out to Goji Center for the video, and let me know in the comments, do you think any other hybrids could beat Mr. Doomsday Rex? Let's go ahead and get in here.
It's been 10 years since hybrid dinosaurs have become a staple of the Jurassic franchise. But
shout out
would
Jurassic
you believe
Park,
that
man.
we could have possibly got even more bizarre monsters?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think we've actually seen this.
Today on Goji Center, we'll
happened.
break down the most horrific and hideous hybrid to ever make it into the concept stage, the Doomsday Rex.
Wait, why am I not familiar with this, by the way?
Wound up being prophetic. To begin, we'll talk about a bit of background explaining how this thing came to fruition. A lot of this happened before a lot of our channel viewers were even born. So strap in, because there's a bit we need to catch up on. After the smash success of the first movie based on Dr. Crichton's
was it in the book,
novel,
maybe? Because I haven't read the book.
Immediately to turn Jurassic Park into a franchise. And given that this was in the 90s, that included an animated television series. The first pitch, shortly, was a sequel to the movie, since the second novel wasn't written out yet. This had a much more grounded style plot, with Isla Nublar getting renovated, and a new park being set up, and handling a plot with dinosaurs escaping on the mainland. Stuff that we would wind up seeing more than a decade later in the second trilogy.
More than a decade. I'm glad they waited.
The idea of some kind of monstrous, unusual dinosaur even lingered about in the tie-in comics from Topps. And an early draft of the second movie included a giant super raptor that wound up turning into the final boss for the Trespasser video game. The second attempt at a TV series, however, the Lost World animated series was a completely serious pitch for a follow-up to the second movie that involved hybrid monstrosities, sci-fi weapons, souped-up giant versions of the normal dinosaurs, and this.
Bro, Goji Center is taking me into a whole new world.
Straight out of Resident Evil, this ungodly abomination was to be the big final antagonist for the series.
Hey, can I get disrespectful for a minute, guys? Let me go back for a little bit. If we go back here to where we can see this man's frontage a little bit, as you can see here, my boy kind of just looks like a big piece of deuce. All right, he just looks like actually these kind of look like feet, you know, giant feet, but then you go up to the body and my boy just looks like deuce stacked on top of each other, you know. Looks like me after a night at Taco Bell. I don't know how many times I've said that, but this is literally me right here. Taco Beezy. This is what I turn into.
Was to be the big final antagonist for the series.
It kind of reminds me of
The Doomsday Rex. What exactly the plot was going to be is still elusive to this day. There just hasn't been much behind-the-scenes info besides the concept art by Philip J. Felix.
I don't know.
Today, we are going to explore this as much as we can, as well as speculate as to what the King of Doomsday was going to be capable of, if it was
Jurassic World mod. They've done that a few times.
The Doomsday Rex apparently has two different stages it would have undergone during the series. The first stage already was as big as most of the larger carnivores in the franchise.
That thing is wild, bro. How does it even move?
A monster sporting fleshy tendrils, a misshapen central body, and
does it just kind of squirm?
Heads roughly in the shape of a Tyrannosaurus. This, alongside the name, is a pretty good indicator.
Tell me that don't remind you of Biolante.
Involved being a T-Rex. The baleful blob would have had a hard time rearing up,
let alone
moving around in the outside world. Even with its formidable jaws and huge size, more agile opponents like an actual T-Rex would be able to dodge around this thing and tear chunks.
Wait, what is that
in? What game is he in right now? Catching up to you in an open area.
It looked like
For a series about genetics gone wrong, this would have been the epitome of that. No point in attempting to discuss how this is biologically plausible, since this thing looks like it belongs in Hollow Earth or Skull Island. Its borderline supernatural transformation to its second state would yield a far more formidable and also even more unbelievable creature.
That's a game.
Behold,
maybe it's just an animation.
As most would have probably remembered it had this monster made its debut. Down to two heads now, but with a much more organized and recognizable body type.
He can see you coming from anywhere, basically.
Essentially being a doubled-up Tyrannosaurus with extra spines, two sets of elongated arms, more grisly features, and we have something that looks like the final boss of a climactic series.
For sure,
what exactly was in the genome of this thing is anyone's guess. The base is obviously still Tyrannosaurus, now recognizable with the two-fingered hands more prominent.
That looks so sick.
But the spines on the top and strange state of the teeth could indicate an unknown hybrid splicing.
Hey, yo, imagine this thing running after you, man. Like, I know a T-Rex is scary enough, but my boy on the left, or on the right here, depending on how you're looking, my boy's got the spikes going down the nose, Over here, he's just got the spike, you know, a couple spike. Either way you look at it, both of these faces are haunting. All right, I don't want to see either.
This could have either given it new
in real life
abilities, additional weapons, or just an edgy amount of spikes that would make the Dominion Giga look smooth by comparison. However, reaching this size makes us run into a big problem, and one of the big reasons why you would never see this Doomsday participating in the Great Hybrid War. See this right here? If this was an InGen Tyrannosaurus, Doomsday would be somewhere in the ballpark of 15 meters tall at the top of the head.
Step on him.
At that size, assuming that the show it features in doesn't severely underestimate its weight, Doomsday would weigh at a staggering 240 tons.
Bro,
However,
what?
looking at the label, this isn't just a typical Jurassic series Tyrannosaurus like the Buck and Doe from the Lost World
How many
movie.
pounds?
This is another original monster for the series called a Super Rex. Orders of magnitude bigger than the Rexes seen in the series. And according to the scaling from the human figure right here, this oversized Turbo T-Rex would already be 9 meters tall at the top of the head, about double the height of most of the T-Rexes from the first trilogy. So, what does this mean for the King of Doomsday? That it would have been more at home in something like the Monsterverse than anything in the more grounded Jurassic franchise.
I agree with that.
Being over 30 meters tall,
it'd have been cool to see in the
Monsterverse at the top of the head. The reason why nature
imagine
never cooked up something like this is because of one huge rule: square cube law. For those new to the channel or who might have missed earlier explanations, square cube law basically states that when you double the dimensions of something, you don't increase the mass by 2, you increase it by 8. Say we got a human that was exactly 200 pounds and 6 feet tall. If you doubled their size, you are now doubling how tall they are top to bottom, how thick they are from front to back, and how wide they are side to side.
That makes sense.
2 times 2 is 8. So our new 12-foot giant doesn't weigh double what they used to at 400 pounds.
They weigh
Instead,
8 times.
they weigh 1,600 pounds. So, back to our Doomsday Rex.
Got a little
Scaling up a
math lesson on the
Tyrannosaurus
deck.
to 24 meters tall at the hip and adding some more mass for a second head and extra limbs, and this absolute colossus of a hybrid could have a mass of roughly 1.3 million kilograms. That's right.
I don't know kilograms to pounds, but I would say it's 1,400.
We weren't kidding when we said this would be something more fit to square up with some smaller kaiju
What's
than
1,400
anything in the Jurassic
pounds?
franchise. Just to exist at that size like this breaks every law of physics when it
2.8
comes to
million
animal
pounds.
biology. This thing would need bones stronger than steel and muscle tissue with thousands of times the torque than the real thing.
In which case,
stand up or
what
move.
can defeat it?
But we aren't going to cut this video short and leave you with your arms crossed, wondering how powerful this thing could be.
Thank you.
Absent physics. So, what if it was real? How much power would we be talking about here?
We'd be toast.
At this huge size, bolstering all of
the
its
human
strength,
down there.
this juggernaut would have a scaled-up chump of a T-Rex to a degree no other hybrid would be able to compare. In a previous episode discussing the biological plausibility of Rebirth's mutant D-Rex, we cited a study by Manabu Sakamoto, which found that doubling the size of a dinosaur's jaws and keeping relatively similar shape roughly corresponds to a 50 to 60% increase in force, with the increase decreasing the bigger and bigger something gets. So,
that
for any
kind of makes
curious,
sense.
it
He lost me
wouldn't
for
be
a second.
simple matter of
Pull me
doubling
back in.
T-Rex bite force repeatedly. Sheer mass and gravity works against an object the bigger it gets. So, taking this into account, the crush of Doomsday scales up over 900,000 newtons of force in the jaws. In terms of PSI, we're looking at over 200,000 PSI. Assuming these jaws can withstand such force, this thing could crunch through armored vehicles and shatter any dinosaur it pressed its teeth on.
I mean, he's eating anything and everything.
We're supposed to deal with this thing in the series is
how would they
guess. Other concept art shows off science fiction tech, like
everything would be
and
toast.
Energy weapons.
Literally everything.
Exactly the typical things the Jurassic franchise often had in dealing with dinosaurs. Had this become the norm for the franchise, we would half expect to see a half-shrunk Jaeger unit in ACU storage by the time the Indominus busted out.
Sick.
Unless the hybrid got shrunk down considerably by the time it would have shown up in the series, this thing would have taken some serious heavy ordnance to take down. Either some powerful device like a high-grade explosive, some kind of synthesized bioweapon, or an outright natural disaster like a volcanic eruption. We are talking about what is essentially a kaiju instead of a dinosaur after all. Doomsday Rex absolutely would be Doomsday to anything it encountered if this thing was up and running around. Sauropods would become snacks, and previous titans of terror, like the normal Tyrannosaurus, could literally get stomped underfoot.
Oh my gosh!
So, how practical would this animal be?
That's crazy.
In a word, just no. No. Let's remember that absolutely massive tyrannosaurs and carnosaurs like T-Rex and the Giga were already pushing the limits on how big a bipedal animal can get. Supporting all of your weight on, let alone trying to run and maneuver upon just 2 legs, means each leg is under a lot more force than on a quadruped. Even with the physics warping that just tends to happen with any fictional franchise, the cloned creations in the Jurassic franchise are still supposed to be normal flesh and blood animals.
And
they just don't break physics to the same degree, something like Godzilla. Now, certain types of animals can have chemically and structurally reinforced bones, for example, but at the end of the day, bone is still bone. And no amount of leg bone in the shape we see here is ever going to hold up even a fraction of that weight. The largest that something the shape of the Doomsday Rex could get is a bit nebulous, but over 18,000 kilograms or 14 tons is probably close to the limit.
Fighting distance
and that's with it living in captivity. No way could something that big survive in the wild with this kind of condition. At this size, the Doomsday Rex would be about 5.5 meters or 18 feet tall.
That's still up
about
there.
the same height as Rexian Dominion, but
how much does he weigh,
a lot of extra mass, with a thicker torso and second head.
So he's gonna weigh a lot more.
Gigantic compared to most other predators in the franchise. But being even just this size would mean keeping up any amount of agility or speed would be very difficult.
He would be strong,
Smaller
but not very fast.
Here.
Pretty
Our
easy.
more viable D-Rex would likely be too front-heavy, making it awkward to move around, and despite its appearance, would actually have issues fighting without a longer pair of forelimbs to aid in balance if it tips over. And that's without getting into the internal issues. The Doomsday resembles a case of conjoined twin syndrome, so the internals would probably be pretty similar. This condition essentially means 2 individuals are sharing a body because they didn't fully divide as egg cells.
That's so crazy.
The specific term we're looking at here is probably a case of what is called dicephalic parapagus. This is where the 2 individuals share most of the same lower body but have a split spinal cord somewhere along the torso to have 2 separate heads. Multiple sets of arms, called tetrabrachius, can also happen in some cases.
Looks cool too.
Dicephalic parapagus is survivable, and the pair can live long lives if the twins make it past infancy, especially if certain organs like the heart are also doubled. This doesn't always happen, however, so many individuals are tragically stillborn.
Take a picture of him doing
just one heart that couldn't keep up with double the burden. And this leads to another problem with this animal bringing its own doom upon itself. If it really did start out as that 3-headed blob, that means some kind of bizarre metamorphosis happened from the first to second stage, meaning one of those heads was either destroyed or perhaps even more gruesomely might have been absorbed into the body while it was maturing. Whatever was left of that head and any other organs attached essentially would become a parasite in its own body, sapping nutrients, overtaxing the organs even more and causing
basically
all
what we've
manner of
learned
disruptions. A real 2-headed tyrannosaur probably did exist at some point or another. Doubled up animals have been found in the wild and in the fossil record. But in this kind of case, doubling the bodies wouldn't double the mass. Stress on the body would make even that 1 in a million chance the form is functional.
That dinosaur or that T-Rex
might actually wind up somewhat smaller than a normal T-Rex.
Unless he was
smaller and less able to hunt down big, dangerous game, a more realistic Doomsday Rex might still be sufficiently dangerous to hunt down lesser animals.
I like it.
So, possibly, like its more modern counterpart set to stalk the screen in Jurassic World Rebirth,
I cannot wait for Jurassic World Rebirth,
might come for a slower moving, squishy, and easy-to-catch food. Humans.
No! I mean, at that point, just cut off the whole dinosaur. I don't want to see him if he's eating just humans. Wouldn't that have been a sick idea, though? Mech suits fighting a 2-headed giant dinosaur. Let me know your thoughts on the Doomsday Rex. I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. Thank you for watching with me. I love y'all. Goodbye.